Welcome to Pastor's Chat today. Well, we're going to finish Revelations chapter 11, and we're going to be reminded of God's faithfulness today. As I look at what's happening here in America and even around the world, I would have never in my lifetime dreamed that we would be seeing what we are seeing. It is beyond my imagination. I am shocked, I'm saddened, but at the same time, I realize God is setting up this world for the end time. And as I'm studying the book of Revelation with you, and as we're looking at the contents of this book, and even though it's a great time of judgment upon this earth because of God's wrath being poured out upon it, just before he comes to set up his kingdom, I'm telling you, my friend, I'm encouraged. And I can imagine that the people, even in John's day, as they were being severely persecuted for their faith, they were encouraged even as they read this book. And I trust that we not be deceived by Satan as we read the book of Revelation to think it's a book that's too hard to understand, it's a book that's too difficult to look at because of these terrible things that take place, but that we look at it and realize our God is faithful. He is a God of justice. He is a God that is holy. He is a God that rewards the righteous, and he is a God that punishes evil. And you can trust him. And if you are trusting him and living for him, you have nothing to fear. Well, that's what we're looking at in verse 18 and 19. We're going to finish the book. Verse 18, the nations were angry, and your wrath has come. All right, so now we're getting ready. We're in the middle of tribulation. We're getting ready to go into the great tribulation as the bowls of God's wrath are poured out and he gives his final judgments on the earth. And here it says the nations were angry. I just keep thinking the nations, instead of being angry, should have been repentant. They should have been turning to God. They should have been asking for mercy, but they're angry. Isn't that amazing? Sometimes the people that you love the most want to help the most, and you're there for them, and you're extending mercy to them when they see the righteousness of the people that really love God. They get angry. They feel condemned, and they react it with anger. And so here the nations were angry. Your wrath has come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged. And you see two judgments here. The time of the dead that they should be judged. So the dead are those who die the second death. Those are the ones in Revelation chapter 20, because in 3.5 years, the great white throne judgment is going to take place. And I said in the end of 3.5 years, actually, the time of the dead is at the end of the millennial. Don't get confused by what I just said. But at the end of the millennial reign of Christ, the great judgment seat of Christ takes place in Revelation 20. The books are open, and everyone, those even the dead, are going to be judged. And if their name's not found written in the book of life, they're cast into the lake of fire. And then he says, and that you should reward your servants, the prophets and the saints, and those who fear your name, small and great, and you should destroy them who destroy the earth. He's talking about the earth dwellers who worship the earth, but they don't realize it. At the same time, they're destroying God's creation. And of course, those who are going to be rewarded, his saints, is going to happen at the judgment seat of Christ. Now that does take place in the middle, somewheres in the tribulation period in heaven. And God's saints will be rewarded, and they'll be given out crowns. And I believe that represents authority that they will have in the kingdom. And so he will reward his saints. And so just mark it down. God's in charge. He punishes the evil, and he rewards the righteous. Then the last verse, then the temple of God was open in heaven, and the ark of his covenant was seen in the temple. And here we were reminded of God's faithfulness, the ark of the covenant. It reminds us of God's covenant with his people, that he's faithful to always give and keep. Now we notice This Ark of the Covenant, of course, has the mercy seat on it. Inside of it is the law, and the cherubims are over the top of it, and the blood was sprinkled on the mercy seat in the Old Testament, reminding us of the sacrifice that had to be paid. The mercy seat, God's sacrifice, God's mercy is evident, and we see that. So then the storm takes place, and there were lightnings and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. Why? Because God's judgment's about to fall. But you and I don't have to fear. We can trust the Lord. And I trust you're trusting Him right now. God bless, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day.